Do you suffer from debilitating migraines? You know, that throbbing pain in the front or side of your head that's so severe you're unable to work or do anything other than retreat into a dark and quiet room? Have you had them for years and just haven't found a solution? Call Dr. Elizabeth Ebersol and put an end to your debilitating migraines forever. Or go to her website at www.handmadehealth.com. That's www.handmadehealth.com.
Well, hello, everybody. Balls to the Wall, episode number 12 on this nice, beautiful Tuesday. It's getting dark early. It seems like it's 8, 9 o'clock, and it's just 5:45. But I'm Kenny Matthews, your host, and my sidekick over here, Billy Martin Jr. How are you doing, buddy?
Hey, man, just watching awards shows and talking about the buddy.
Man, well, hey, it's always my favorite hour of the week here to talk baseball and all kinds of sports with my man Billy Martin Jr. And hey, we really appreciate you guys listening to us, and we appreciate you guys who subscribe to us at Rumble and at YouTube and Facebook and Twitter. You know, it's real simple. Just click subscribe so we can keep bringing you some great content here week by week, man. We want to get this thing bigger and bigger as we go on. And, you know, and down the road, I was going to even talk with Billy about this. We'll try to maybe get some guests going down the road over here too. You know, I think that would be really good. Just kind of spice it up, something different here. And, you know, we're always going to talk whatever the current sport events going on there. And we'll try our best to keep politics out of it. We know everybody needs a break from that. So hopefully this podcast will be one of those that'll give you a nice, fresh, clean slate of that. Billy Martin, there's a lot of things. We'll try not to go too long and on because I want to get it all in today for sure. But we got to talk about the World Series recap. We were here taping last Tuesday. It was game 6. We were hoping for game 7. And boy, we talked about how Fried hadn't pitched worth a darn in the playoffs. And what does he do? He goes out there and shuts down that vaunted Astros lineup. I mean, I look back at some of those scores in that 6th game over there. Astros just didn't hit, you know, period. I mean, you can talk about analytics and talk about starting pitching and all that other stuff, but that lineup that was on fire the last 3 games against Boston, man, they went out with a whimper, and that to me was the biggest surprise of all during that World Series.
It was, and I always wanted game 7. Even though
I did too.
I was kind of excited for the Braves and the Braves fans, and having not had one since the turn of the century, it's kind of neat. And here we have, on the very year Hank Aaron dies.
Yeah.
10 days after his vaccination, Hank Aaron passes. The Atlanta Braves win 44 games in the first half. And the Atlanta Braves win 44 games in the second half on their way to a World Series to honor one of baseball's Mount Rushmores, one of the greatest players ever, who Mickey Mantle, always getting compared to Willie Mays, used to say, hey, I don't care. Hank Aaron's better than both of us.
Absolutely. You know, if there's a guy that, you know, made a great point, Mount Rushmore, it's still underrated somehow to me. You know, when you say the best players in the game, his name still doesn't come up 1, 2, or 3.
I think there's a reason. I think especially today's fan just associates him as the home run only type guy.
Right.
And that you know, he was just Joey Gallo type of guy, really. And they don't realize how complete of a hitter he was. And I mean,
we talked off air. take away his home runs, he's still got 3,000 hits.
That's a guarantee you're going to the Hall, right?
And I think he was also very underrated outfielder too. He was just one of those guys that made all the routine plays, had a good arm. He didn't. Now he's not going to be the guy that's making diving catches, jumping over the fences and all that. But he made all the plays that you needed to do, and he played a very important position back during that day, was right field. That was where all of your best athletes were generally playing. And then back during the 50s and the 60s was playing right field. Hence Clemente, Frank Robinson's, you can go down the line. And he played it flawlessly to a T where I think I saw a stat that one year he only had 2 errors. I'm thinking having 162 games, you only have 2 errors. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. You don't have a pitcher kicking sand off the mound because you made an error, because you normally don't make them.
Well, my father told me, he said, Hank could play center field.
Yeah.
He absolutely could.
I've heard that too. I read that in his book.
As a kid, in Hank's farewell season, he announced, I guess, before the year was over, that he was going to retire. So he walked out and gave the lineup card pretty much everywhere he went so that fans could pay their respects. And it was the only time my father ever had a player from the other team sign something to me. And Hank, I walked out there with Dad, and I was about, I don't know, 10 or 11, I think. And Hank gave me one of his bats signed to me. And of course, I still have it and honor it to this day. But my father was such a big fan of his. And I don't know, like you said, I don't quite get it, because he is on that Mount Rushmore list for me of all-time best players ever.
The only thing I would say about Hank Aaron, as great of a player as he was on the field, he was better off the field. You won't find anybody say anything negative about Hank Aaron. In all the years after he retired, he worked in the front office for the Braves. He was a humanitarian for MLB for a number of years. And I know I have never heard a bad thing about Hank Aaron in my 54 years of being here, and all the books that I've read on Hank Aaron. And I've never heard anybody say, hey, came inside, whatever, wanted to see him or take care of business on there. He didn't talk trash on the field. He went about his business. He got hit a bunch, just went down the first base. We want to talk about the true throwback of the game.
Absolutely.
That was him.
Absolutely. Well, and you think about it, what I said Mickey Mantle said. People are always comparing the best, and Mickey's sons are like brothers to me, right? And I can get them going a little bit when we start having the Babe Ruth comparisons and stuff. And but when it comes to Hank, the first thing they'll say is, Dad always said, the Mick himself would say, hey, quit comparing me and Willie. Hank was better than both of us. And, that says something. He wouldn't say that unless he also didn't love him as a guy.
Absolutely.
Because, otherwise, why even mention him?
Well, and another thing to go with this class there, every time you talk to Barry Bonds to Hank Aaron said Barry Bonds is the home run champion. He never said an asterisk, any of that, never mentioned steroids. Barry Bonds, he was there when Barry Bonds hit the home run. He chased him around, to try to give it. And somewhere deep down inside, Hank had to say, no, he's really not. But I got to put on this happy face and this persona that he is. And he stayed consistent with that until his death. He really does. He never, ever diminished what Barry Bonds did. And he's a bigger man than I am. I think I would have cracked
Absolutely.
somewhere down the line.
Oh, come on. So we get Hank on the juice. What do you think?
Yeah.
Hit 1,000?
Exactly. Well, this is an exercise I want our audience to do. Go to his 1976 baseball card, turn it over, just look at the consistency of the home runs and the average and the RBIs on it. It's like a 13-year period, Billy Martin there. It's unbelievable. It's almost, you could just fill it in the next year the same way, and there it is. He's not hitting 60 home runs. He's hitting 43. He's hitting 44. He's hitting 45. And it's just down the line. And you go, well, dang, that 10-year period, he hit 450 home runs. It's just amazing, his consistency. It really was. And you know what? And he played on a very, very, very talented Braves team there in the late 50s that won the World Series and went back-to-back World Series. You know, that Dill Crandalls and people of that nature there. And I'm so glad he got his World Series then, because, he almost had that where he had a 25-year career and not a ring. That would have been, really brutal for him. So I think that's the reason why you can definitely put him on that Mount Rushmore of baseball, because he does have a ring, and everything else that went with it was just really icing on the cake with his personality and all.
Well, they just announced that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is the American recipient of the Hank Aaron Award.
You want to talk about a guy that actually took the offseason serious last year after COVID? He made himself into an MVP last year because he actually took the offseason and got his body right. And that made him he was already a very good ball player. Don't get me wrong. He's already naturally good, but he was great last year.
Yeah. Oh, don't you love seeing that? Rafael Devers did the same thing for the Red Sox. That first year here he is playing in the World Series at 22, and he's fat, he's sticking out all over his uniform, and a lot of people worry about that stuff and how it works itself out in the clubhouse. Yeah. You're walking around naked with these guys in the shower, and you look around and you go, wow, I'm the only fat ass in here. These other guys all look like they got like a 12 packs. I need to get to work.
Yes. And that's, he's opposite of Pablo Sandoval in that situation.
Sad.
Every time Panda tried to lose weight, he couldn't hit.
So he didn't believe it was the right move for him, and it's a terrible juxtaposition for him. But I know.
Well, I don't want to get away from the World Series. I do want to add this before we go to our next topic. The Braves are set up for a stretch here now. Their youngest players, their best players, albeit Freeman. You always, Freeman's probably the best player on their team now. If all-around player, what he means to that team. Obviously you can say is, soon to be that way, but they're loaded. They really are. If you get everybody in that pitching staff back, you get Soroka back in that pitching lineup next year. They're 4 deep.
Yeah,
really
and Alex Anthopoulos said that payroll is going to go up. So
it's
what
definitely
going to go. It's
definitely going to go up when they sign. Well, yeah. Well, it's definitely going to go up when they re-sign Freeman. There's going to be a little bit of money because he made him some money here in the month of October, for himself. And there's a guy that was batting 220, I think, around the All-Star break. For the first part.
What a second half.
That second half was. It almost reminds me of Carl Yastrzemski of '67 a little bit. Carrying a team, getting the big hits all the way through the second half, where you had a team that was kind of laboring, and then all of a sudden they just caught that hot streak in August, and look out, they're World Series champs. When we started doing these podcasts, we didn't have the Braves winning the World Series. You know? We did.
When's the last time you can remember a team winning it all when they lose their best player early? I mean, I don't remember the date when Acuna went down.
I believe I saw it was June. It was June 16th, I believe is what I saw. So that was about 3 weeks before the trading deadline.
Yeah, and obviously, Anthopoulos went out and made some great moves, adding, revamping the whole outfield, basically, and that guy's a mover and a shaker, man. I mean, I know from being an agent, when you have a free agent that he wants,
yeah,
I kid you not, you may hear from him 6 to 8 times a day.
Wow.
And I respect that as much as it can be
persistence.
But it's not a pain because you want that when you have a free agent. You want to be worn out because that's a good sign.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
he works that way. And I've got other friends in that organization like Dana Brown, and obviously we talked about Tyler Matzek, who played for the Texas Air Hogs, and so happy for him. But it's neat for the Braves fans who got hosed out of the All-Star game. And
a little chilly handoff from commissioner with the trophy. little chilly handoff.
Stay out of politics.
But the commissioner did make it out of Atlanta, I heard, safely.
Yeah. Well, he was wearing a body armor, I think, and asked the president to borrow half of his staff. So.
Yeah, how the commissioner used to sit down on that second row over there behind first base dugout, for the World Series games. Bamford chose the suite, which was probably smart. But yes, I want to say congratulations, Braves. Like I said, I didn't see that coming. It was one heck of a year, and what I'm telling you folks is get ready. There's more. They're going to be there. They're going to be there for a while now because you get your number one pitcher back next year. You get your number one player back next year. That's like free agency in the off season.
Yeah.
It really is. It's like you're picking up a stud outfield and a stud pitcher. And man, to go with that, the length in their lineup and the length in their rotation, man, they're in good shape. And it was and I was thinking about this, and be the last thing I'll say about it. I'm sure the getting old Bobby Cox had to have been pretty happy to see that happen. I was really thinking about that. It's been a long time since he's seen the Braves won. And, later in your life, I'm sure he had a lot more of appreciation of what he did in 91, but he really probably appreciated what these guys did too.
Hey, what a great man, what a great baseball man. From a personal standpoint, I loved him. He was on my father's staff, and they were real close. And oh gosh, it's been over a decade probably, but I was on MLB radio one day, and I'd been whining a little bit about my father not being inducted into the Hall of Fame that year. And he came and found me at the winter meetings. It was in Orlando, where they're supposed to be this year. We'll see. And he came and found me and put his arm around me the year he'd been inducted, and said, "Hey, pal, don't worry. We're getting him in." And I don't know, it just meant a lot to me that he came and found me and did that. And that was the year he and Tony La Russa got in, and they're two of Dad's guys. I mean,
Sure.
He was close to both of them, and
cut from the same sheet.
Oh, yeah. Talk about a guy that had your back. I mean, Bobby got kicked out of more games than my father ever did. So put that into perspective, I mean, they talk about my father kicking dirt and getting in trouble. Bobby Cox got kicked out almost twice as much as my father did. So there's a guy that had his players back. There's a guy that knows how to win. And you're right. Here's to you, Bobby Cox. He helped create what just happened.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It means a lot to that. It means a lot to that city too, for sure. Yeah. And, guys, we really do appreciate you guys listening to us, man. If you can subscribe to us on Rumble and YouTube and Twitter and Facebook, man, we really appreciate that. Keep this thing going. And we'll go on to the second topic of the day. And I was out of town and my grandkids had birthdays this weekend down in Houston, but getting back to my hotel room about 4:30 on Sunday afternoon and seeing it, what that Cowboys Denver score was and all the text messages and things coming through. Could you have predicted that butt whipping from the Broncos, trading away Miller, and all that before they came in? And then my question was to my friend, was Cooper Rush playing? At that point, because they weren't scoring. I thought, well, maybe Dak didn't start the game. And he said, so
No.
I didn't get to see it, but I do know the end results of it. But man, that was a stunner on a stunning weekend of a bunch of upsets in the National Football League.
It was absolutely crazy week. I mean, in the NFL, but I did watch that game. And right here, you got your quarterback. You're back. You're amazing quarterback back after this stealing a win with Cooper Rush. That was, a damn happening. I mean, come on. So if you watch the game, obviously now we got Dak back. Here we go. We take the opening kickoff. The Cowboys take the opening kickoff across the 50-yard line, and then boom, something bad happens. A big penalty. We lose. Second half, you remember another giant play. We get the blocked punt.
Yep.
And then it goes the other way, and that's a bad rule in the NFL. I'm sorry. You should have to at least get the first down because it's still fourth down.
Right. Yes.
At the end of the day, you still have to cross the freaking mark for the first down on fourth down, no matter who touches it, in my opinion.
Right.
But I think those two big plays, getting your psyche, your hype, getting all excited, and then getting the carpet jerked out from under you,
right,
I think was too much for them, and that's a problem.
Sure.
You can't let those things get to you because they're going to keep happening.
Well, a good buddy of mine told me the other day is that if you can predict football games in the National Football League, he says you can make a really good living, but he says it's very hard to do that and make a living at it. And to his point, there was 13 favorites on Sunday and Monday. 3 of them covered. That was it. 3 of them covered. So I said it was a dog day afternoon, for the National Football League. And I mean, you look at a Buffalo team scoring 6 points, that vaulted offense, averaging 24 points a game, and they scored 6 points the other day. I couldn't believe the scores that I had coming through there. Kansas City only scores 13 points at home to a Green Bay team that doesn't have Aaron Rodgers. It's the National Football League. It's crazy how much I wish baseball would do a salary cap so we can get some parity, where we can get some bottom dwellers, to be competitive every now and then. I think that's really helped the National Football League because one year you can be really awful, but the next year you can be relevant, or you can get relevant real quick, especially if you get a quarterback. Especially if you get a quarterback now, you automatically, your team is much better. But it's just fun to see how, I love watching everybody Wednesday and Thursday. Oh, this team's going to win. This team's going to win. This team's going to win. And you get up there and go, man, that's not anywhere close, to what you were thinking, And I mean, to your point, the week before, we didn't think the Cowboys had a shot at winning at all because Cooper Rush was going to play.
No, I had already literally said out loud, hey, we can afford, Cowboys can afford to lose this game. It'll be okay. It's no big deal. We're losing this game. And then we play this amazing game. Like, you know what? And so does getting Dak back does that make the guys dial it down a notch and say, oh yeah, here we go? And
Sure.
maybe, but that shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
That's
Sure.
that's part of being a pro. But our brain, our brain is such a big factor. I literally asked Jay Novacek, former Dallas Cowboy tight end. I asked him to sign a whiskey bottle. He's got a new number 84 whiskey out, and it's great, by the way. Not that I drink whiskey, but no, it's
Wyoming
outstanding,
Cowboy.
man.
A Wyoming Cowboy who likes whiskey? Nah.
Doctor, right? That's weird, huh? But I asked him to sign a bottle to one of my clients, and he goes, "Tell me a little about him first."
Mm.
And I did. It was a kid who's a small town kid and whose stuff has always been better than his results. Okay. And he wrote down, your attitude is everything, Jay Novacek. And, you think about it. I mean, they've shown that you could prove to yourself, to your own body, you can trick yourself by standing tall and puffing that chest out and walking around like you own the place. You can even fool your own self, your own brain into thinking I'm better than I really am.
Sure.
Let alone what you look like to your competition, right? Or your teammates. You're giving off all this vibe of strength and confidence.
Mm.
The Einsteins of the world were able to tap into 35% of their brain. The rest of us are at 20%. What's that other 70% capable of? And whoever figures that out is gonna beat all the analytics and everything ever devised.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I want to move on to a subject that I think you're going to be very happy about. That is Texas Tech. This time last week, we talked about Mr. Wells being canned. We thought maybe he wasn't the right fit to go in, but we thought we maybe should have been able to finish out the year. Later in the week, we found out Texas Tech wanted to kind of get ahead of the ball game and trying to look for a coach and not wait till the end of the season, where there's a lot more competition, obviously, with other jobs that be opening up. I think they had a home run hire here in Mr. McGuire, Cedar Hill's own head coach, a three-time champ out there in Cedar Hill land, and been the assistant now at Baylor for the last 3 years there. The guy's roots in the state of Texas and in high school ranks is, it's second to none. Talk about another guy like Hank Aaron that everybody likes and loves. You won't hear a bad thing about him at all. Nobody say that. I think it's a slam dunk hire for you guys. Big congratulations. I love the guy to death. He's been wonderful Friday Night Glory. When we got our start, I mean, I can't say enough superlatives about him as a person, and he's a pretty darn good coach too.
Well, I'll tell you this, and I'm glad you say that because you obviously know him much better than I do. But I will say this about, well, first let me say that had the greatest coach in Texas Tech history not been fired for shooting his mouth off, and then 2 weeks later we hire Bobby Knight, who did the exact same thing at Indiana. I never quite understood that, but anyways, Mike Leach is who I'm referring to, and he's one of my all-time favorites. He was a big fan of my father's. So let alone,
I can see that.
he said that. When he said that in the press, and he was coaching my Red Raiders, I'm like, oh, you had me at hello. But
I can see that.
personal friend. No, that does excite me because I will say this: our new athletic director, who came from your alma mater,
Right.
You notice one of the very first moves he did, and this is really awkward for me, is he hired Tim Tadlock, who was the recruiting coordinator and assistant coach at OU
Yep.
to put OU in a College World Series.
Absolutely. Still bitter.
And oh, you should be. I mean, first thing he did. So when I run, the guy who was head coach at the time, Texas Tech, I played with when I was at Tech. Let me rephrase that. I set the bench, watched play when I was at.
Just say teammate.
But and he was a great guy. And I watched him and another player who were platooning basically at third base. I'm talking about Dan Spencer. And he and Tommy Hernandez, who runs the Dallas Tigers baseball program, one of the best, summer ball programs in the country, have had. I guarantee there's not another summer ball program in the country that had 2 Cy Young winners in the same year. And so these 2 guys were platooning basically at third base, yet stayed after practice, hit each other fungo, threw each other BP. Any other 2 guys like that would have hated each other's guts. But these 2 said, hey, it's not up to us. Let's get better.
Nice.
I can't tell you how much respect I have for both of them. And here Dan gets the coaching job there. And even that's another story we'll have to say for another cast. But they hired Tim to be the lame duck coach on the sidelines when everybody knows he's going to take over. And they're both friends of mine. I've known Tim for years. When he was at Grayson College, agents, scouts, we would all send him players because guys that went to play for him got better.
Yeah.
The 2 coaches I sent guys to were Tim Tadlock and Skip Johnson, speaking of OU.
Yeah.
All right. And if I had a pitcher, I usually called Skip first. If I had a hitter, I called Tim first. Whoever called me back first got a stud. And they were best friends. And still are super close. And it's I always kind of hope they'd end up on the same staff somewhere, maybe as the twilights come around. But I cheer for both of them. They're great guys, and this hire could be really neat because the way they went after him, making these moves like you say now, it smells like the Tadlock move, and so we know that was a good one.
I think you hit it right on the nail. It's one of those where it's a no-brainer to me. I mean, has he been a head coach in the college level? No. If there is a certain risk with that, sure. But I think if he hires well, you're already seeing instantly in the recruiting. He picked up 2 3-star players from Cedar Hill already last night. Yeah, guy hadn't even changed his jacket yet. He's got 2 oral commits. So like, it's already brought the one thing that they needed in that football program: excitement, euphoria. They've lost that in the last 3-4 years. They've lost that since Tuberville's been there. They need that groundswell of excitement. And man, he did that already in 24 hours. And that's only going to carry because, like I said, he's so connected in the state. I mean, if he just recruits the state of Texas every year, he's going to be fine. And especially, and it doesn't hurt that Oklahoma and Texas won't be in that conference anymore. So you don't have to compete against them, for trying to win a championship, so, the field gets leveled out, big time. So, I mean, I think, like I said, I think it's a slam dunk. It's a home run for you guys, man. I'll quietly be rooting for Mr. Coach McGuire for sure out there because he deserved it. It's nice to see the good guys succeed and get, an opportunity like this. And he did it the right way. I mean, he did it the exact right way. He got the permission to talk. He stayed at Baylor last year. They gave him a raise last year to stay at Baylor, and it paid off for him financially. And I think his kids finally graduated too, so nothing's holding them back now from Waco to Lubbock.
What I love about it the most is so many D1 head coaching jobs have to go through the process.
Right.
Which,
Right.
I'm sorry, that's a damn joke to me. You know, we talked about Tim Tadlock. He won 3 national championships at Grayson.
Yeah.
Okay. He didn't need to go be Sonny's caddy at OU. If he'd got the head job there, he'd still be there and you'd have already won a national championship. Right?
Like I said, I'm very, very, very bitter that Sonny was kept and Tadlock was there. God, very. Yes.
Okay. So we saw how he did at Auburn, right? Without Tim. And we've seen what Tim's done on his own. Why should Tim have to go be a caddy? He already proved it. You know, great Wayne Graham at Rice University. Wayne Graham played AAA baseball. He never made it to the major leagues, right? He was really close.
Mhm.
He went straight from there to high school head coaching job, where he won some state championships. Not hard to do, not easy to do in the state of Texas. He went from there to San Jack Community College, a JC. Won a couple national championships.
Yeah.
Brought in some Pettits and some Clemens and some Hall of Fame type dudes. He went from there to Rice and won a few more national championships. He was never an assistant coach in his life, and all he did was win it all everywhere he went.
Wow.
So why does somebody have to be a head coach, be the assistant, do it at this level?
Right.
You either got it or you don't. And a good AD, just like a good GM, should be able to look at that and say, this is my guy. This is who I believe in. I don't care if he's paid his dues or not.
It's the trailer to what you think, man. Go with your gut. You know, that's the way it should be. It shouldn't be to overly. I hate when you hear overly qualified or not as qualified. You know, I mean, overly qualified means maybe you're a horrible interview. You know, you've got all the qualifications there, but you know, you sit down and you're a lump of coal. You know, so it's, you know, it could be.
What does that mean? Overly qualified? Does that mean you're so caught up in yourself that you're not a good coach anymore? What?
Yeah. And then the other one, well, he hasn't done it long enough, hasn't been. I don't know. You know, I just some people are good coordinators. You know, and some people are, you know, good head coaches, you know, and then just because you're a good coordinator doesn't make you a good head coach. You know, it doesn't. And if you're a head coach and you're a good coach, doesn't mean you're a good offensive or defensive coordinator either, because you're used to calling the shots. You know, so, you know, it takes a special talent to be able to maneuver all that. And sometimes you just, I mean, I'll tell you a great example of that. Bud Foster was a defensive coordinator at Virginia Tech for over 30 years. You know, he had opportunities to go other places. He never did. Now, here's a guy that, you know, he made a real good living, and he goes out as one of the best defensive coordinators to ever be in college football now that he's retired. But he stayed in his lane. He knew what his lane was. He knew exactly what it was, and Virginia Tech rewarded him every year with a nice salary and said, yeah, we appreciate what you're doing. You know, you just have to, sometimes you have to know what you are, is what the great Bill Parcells used to always say, dude, know who you are. You know?
Well, I also heard Bill say that where he figured out how to get to the Hall of Fame was when he was on the Texas Tech coaching staff.
Oh, that's right. He was. That's right. He was. That's where he got his start, wasn't it? That's right.
I sadly just found that out about a week ago. So
tune in, love it. Can't even believe it.
Yeah. Well, I still blame him for Tony Romo's woes. I mean, when he had him, when he was a starting quarterback and he was still holding extra points. You know, it's when he botched that snap.
Seattle.
That's what made the last second curse on him, I think, for the rest of his career. And he shouldn't have been out there, because had I been coaching the other team and the starting quarterback was holding extra points. I'm sorry. I'm telling both of my gunners, whoever knocks him out, I'm not only paying your fine, but you're getting a big bonus.
Well, I'd like to move on a little bit too. I'll just talk briefly about the BCS, and I'll just say this about the BCS. Everybody gets excited about this in the beginning. I could care less. And here's a guy that Oklahoma's always in it, or around it, and it means nothing in October. It means nothing in the first couple of weeks of November. I mean, we already had teams lose, had unimpressive, wins this past weekend that were in the top 8. It doesn't matter. And I don't understand why so many people get so caught up in it and get so upset about what the October 29th, the November 1st BCS rankings are. I mean, it just doesn't matter. There's too much of the season left first. And I also think as the season goes on and you're a team that maybe is not accustomed to being undefeated, you start pressing via Michigan State beating Michigan the way they did the week before, emotional win, then boom, the following week you come up in Minnesota, put you back in your place. Michigan State's not being talked about in the BCS this week, am I correct? But they were up to 3rd last week. I guess it's TV generated. I guess it gives it a chance for the college football announcers to, I guess. But for me, Billy, I know a lot of people care about it. I don't give a damn about it. I just don't.
It's prediction. And I guess we should care because we're doing a show and that's kind of what we do. We talk about the future and all that stuff, but you're right. What's it really mean?
The OU board that I'm on, I mean, you would have thought that, somebody told Oklahoma that they're the worst team in college football, being ranked number 8 last year. And I just asked them point blank on the board, has Oklahoma looked like a top 10 team all year anyway? Most of them said no. And I said, you're complaining about 8? I said, you need to use the highs here. I said, the eyeball test generally works out. Now, I think this going forward, how much more anticlimactic is this going to be if they open it up to 12 teams? I mean, it's we're going to be talking about the 20th team, the 21st team, or the 19th team trying to get to 12. I mean, where does it stop? I don't think that ever will. But I said, obviously somebody's buying into it because it's a made-for-TV event that I'd never watch.
Yeah, I would prefer a deeper playoff system. I think the whole world would prefer a deeper playoff system.
Yep.
If we had to add a couple games, so be it. The players will do it. The schools will just make more money that get to go to the extra games. So what's the number? Do you stop at 8? Do you take the final 8? Do you take final 16? But come on, it's time. Let's do it right. Let's quit relying on rankings and all this stuff. Let's get to a point where we say, okay, we're taking the top 16 teams,
right,
and this is how we're doing it. Maybe we knock out one preseason game, but why? At the end of the day,
right,
they'll figure it out.
Take a page from March Madness. You have brackets. There you go.
That's all we got to do.
The money will come in. The money will come in.
How many people are fired up? When you say BCS, some people say, what? What are you talking about?
Well, then they say that the season's too long. Take away from the conference championship game. And so what about if you have two sides of a bracket and they're undefeated? Well, they're both going to make the 16-team tournament anyway. Who cares? Go champs. Go about yourself. Take away that That way, if you want to give back one of the games on the other side, because you're worried about, athletes playing 14, 15 games, take away one of that. Take away one of those, like those when Alabama plays, Furman in 2 weeks before they play Auburn. Who cares about that game? Take away that game. So there's ways you can maneuver this where it's not going to deplete the game as a lot of people think that it is, but it's just be smart about it. But yeah, I think it would be huge. You're talking about the month of December and, late November, talking about a tournament, just like the FCS tournament. They play a tournament. Division III plays a tournament. I guess it's, for me, I guess it's just I simplify things, and I guess these other tired heads try to complicate things for us, and I don't know why.
About this. We're sports guys, but we can't watch them all. We can't see them all, But if I don't watch the 3 hockey games all year, I watch the playoffs. I watch the NBA playoffs. I watch the NFL playoffs. I'm watching the MLB playoffs. But the playoffs fire me up, and
it's win or go home.
I'm not alone there. I'm going to guess a lot of people are right there with me.
Like Game 7, it's winning. Move in advance, win in advance. So there's always going to be that element of added excitement because of that. And if you had the 16 playoff, Cincinnati's in there anyway. Michigan State would still probably be in there as we had that 16 game deal. I would think maybe some of your non-conference games would be even stronger, because maybe in Alabama's not probably a good place. Maybe Oklahoma would play a Michigan week 1, because they said, well, if we lose this game, we still have a shot to get into the Sweet 16, that 16 team parlay. We don't have to play Tulane or something of that nature. Maybe it would do that. I don't know. But, like I said, it's over my pay grade, but it just seems like we can really simplify this thing to make it better. But anyhow, that was my rant on the BCS. I apologize for that, but and Lord and behold, it's on again tonight. I'll make sure not to watch again. And hey, I wanted to say one last thing. Billy, I know that athletes need to live on the edge sometimes, and they need something else to replace that adrenaline rush and everything. But I cannot understand how you can get in an automobile and go 156 miles an hour in a residential street, nonetheless. I don't know. I didn't know they made regular cars that can actually do that in the first place anymore. But I don't understand the need of that late at night when you already have been drinking. I'm always that person that thought if there was the edge that you had maybe one or too many, you may go too slow, instead of the other, because you don't want to have that risk of being pulled over, because if you get pulled over, it's automatically going to jail. And
what's he have to lose? Everything.
Everything.
That's let alone how I did one time in West Texas, not drinking, drive 130 miles an hour out where flat and I could see forever. And I really wanted to test the car and see if it would go that fast. And my father had bought me a Porsche, and I was literally going to Plainview, Texas to get my fraternity tattooed to my ankle, and opened it up. And thank God I got so lucky. There was one little hill, one little bitty hill I went over. Guess what was on the other side of it? A school bus with the lights flashing. I passed a school bus letting kids out at 130 miles an hour in West Texas, where there are no hills.
Yeah,
right?
I was about to say, where did you find the hills?
My friend and I just, we slowed down, and I pulled over. I got out of my car and I walked around because all I could think about, and I'm getting goosebumps right now, all I could think about was, what if a kid crossed that road?
Absolutely.
What if I just ended a kid's life and I wouldn't have had any chance of stopping? I never saw it. And you just looking through a tunnel when you're driving that fast anyways.
Right.
And
Right.
and here I thought, it's an afternoon, it's a Friday afternoon, it's
Sure.
middle of the day. This is the safest time to do it. It's not at night.
Mm-hmm.
And I could have easily killed 5 kids. And that was it. I asked Dad to sell that thing and got a Toyota 4Runner after that. And so no, I don't get it at all, especially when you have that kind of money and power and the ability to say, hey, could I drive one of those NASCARs one day?
Well, that's the other thing. There's a place that you can do it, and he has the means to do it probably all the time if he wanted to do
Sure.
that. He could probably take his vet out there. They'd probably say, bring it out there. You don't even have to have a car that's built for this track, and you can do it. But to do it at 4 a.m. is just mind-boggling. Now, I know we're saying stuff that's easy for us to say that because we're sitting on this outside end, don't know what was going on, no. But still, it's just, you had a career in the NFL where you were a really good player. You have first round money already. You have a new contract that will be coming up in 3 years. And you're a vital part of the team too. He's not a backup wide receiver. He is their number one guy besides the tight end Waller. I just didn't get it, and I just feel really horrible for the person that you're getting in your car at 4 a.m. in the morning and this blur hits you. I mean, how many times have you gotten up early and gone to the airport for whatever reason, kind of half asleep and groggy, and all of a sudden just this, rocket hits your car and you're no longer here. I mean, it's just.
I used to know an accountant who would only do baseball and hockey players. He wouldn't do basketball and football players. And I asked him one day, what's up with that? Why? What's the difference? And he says, because baseball and hockey players get humbled in the minor leagues.
Yes.
NFL and NBA players are college superstars. When they're in college, they could be on the cover of Sports Illustrated. They could be the lead story in ESPN.
Absolutely.
You rarely read about a hockey player or a baseball player. They're rarely on the cover or the lead story. You only see the baseball team when they win the College World Series and they get the big dog pile picture.
Sure.
Sure.
I can still see
so,
Judge doing that.
Yeah. They go in the first round, then they go get humbled. They go play A-ball and AA and AAA. And they have to, and by the time they get there and they look around, they realize that only 3 guys from their draft are even still in the organization. They realize they've been blessed and that they're lucky, and sadly the NFL and NBA guys, a lot of them feel bulletproof because their butts are kissed all through high school and college. And now they're multimillionaires getting their butts kissed.
Right. And
that's the sad part that, how does somebody not sit down with these guys and work with them and let them understand those things, because everything's worked out for them and they're such young guys. Yep. I mean, I got to admit it. I do sadly understand it to some degree.
Sure.
Because like I told you earlier, I was a dumbass kid myself at times. And by the grace of God was lucky.
Yes.
Something else I've got to say, whether you guys are listening on Rumble or YouTube, please subscribe, because it helps us get to other people.
Yes.
And throw us a shout out. Tell us what you want to talk about. Otherwise, you're going to have to put up with whatever Kenny and I come up with.
Yeah, you're stuck like Chuck. You're stuck with this little piece of paper telling us what we're going to talk about. Man, Billy, this is always, like I said, it's a fun part of the week, man. I get to see you and catch up with you, and wishing you the best. You keep doing things. You keep doing things the way you've been doing. I know you're about to get busy with this off season, so hopefully you'll be busy because we'll have an agreement. We have an agreement. Hopefully we have winter meetings. Hopefully.
Well,
But
let's hope that if they can't come up with one, they will revert back to the oldest rule in sports, like we talked about earlier. Do over and
mulligans.
and at least sign a 1-year deal on the old deal.
Yeah.
Have another year to figure it out.
Yes, it will. That's definitely going to be a topic. I have a feeling we'll have a topic in December about this. I think we'll have a pretty good idea of where this is headed in December. And I'm sure the podcast will be full of it. There's no question.
Balls to the wall.
Well, thanks, guys. We appreciate you listening to Balls to the Wall on this Tuesday night. We'll catch you next week. Billy Martin, always a pleasure. Kenny Matthews, as he said, please subscribe to us on Bumble and YouTube. We really would appreciate that.